Hello, Español 4. Here is another PowerPoint for you about the subjunctive and adverbial clauses, just for you. A quick review on how to form the subjunctive. So for regular verbs, you start with the yo form, drop the o, and add the opposite ending. So for verbs that end in, AR verbs are going to end in es, which is the opposite. So es, etc. ER and IR verbs are going to end in the letter A. All right, and so here are your endings here, even though I can see that stuff went a little awry here. Got kind of a weird looking thing there, but there's your AR verb endings right here because they get the E's, and here are the ER and IR verb endings. It says, in Spanish, adverbial clauses are commonly introduced by conjunctions. So some conjunctions are always followed by the subjunctive because they introduce actions or states that are uncertain or have not happened yet. So these phrases that are always going to be followed by the subjunctive, a menos que, antes que, con tal que, en caso que, para que, and sin que. The days are in parentheses because there's something that you'll see about how you use them differently. Some examples of using the subjunctive with adverbial clauses. So it says, el ejército siempre debe estar preparado en caso de que haya un ataque. Notice we have our en caso de que. Que is our thing that needs the subjunctive. Haya is the verb that comes in the subjunctive. El presidente ganará las elecciones otra vez a menos que cometa algún error. So here's our a menos que. Our que is the thing that tells us that we need the subjunctive. Here is our verb in the subjunctive. El candidato debe explicar mejor su programa antes de que. There's our thing. Que tells us that we need the subjunctive. Yo voté por él. It says, English often uses subordinate clauses when there is no change of subject. Spanish uses the infinitive instead. For example, you can say something with I. Notice there's no change in subject. I took the medicine so that I would get better. Tomé la medicina para curarme. Notice that I use the infinitive, and the infinitive is attached with the reflexive pronoun here. This tells who's being cured. It says she listens to Spanish every day so that she can improve in her listening, IPAs. All right, notice that we have she in both spots. That's where we get our mejorar. We use our infinitive verb. If there is no change in the subject of the sentence, there is no subordinate clause. So instead use prepositions without the word que and follow it with the infinitive. So this says, los miembros del jurado no deben hablar del juicio con el público antes de darle su decisión al juez, because there is no change in subject. The subjunctive is not needed, and we use the infinitive instead. All of these are examples of that. I hope that you can see the con tal que, en caso de, para, and sin. That would be this one down here. When I make these fancy little charts, sometimes they don't always translate so well into explain everything. The following conjunctions can be followed by the subjunctive or the indicative. Be sure to take down those notes. Por ejemplo, it says, léelas, so read them. El gobierno promete trabajar duro hasta que no haya más abusos de poder. So we use our hasta que. The que calls for the subjunctive. Here's our subjunctive right there. El señor Fernández les mandará el dinero a los secuestradores en cuanto le den prueba de seguridad de su hijo. All right, again, we have our en cuanto here. So here's our subjunctive. Aunque mejoren los sistemas de seguridad, todavía tendrá miedo. So aunque is one of those things here. And here's our subjunctive that follows it. Cuando hablen con la prensa va a exigir la libertad para los prisioneros. So cuando is one of those phrases that calls for the subjunctive. Our subjunctive follows it directly. However, if the action in the main clause has already happened or happens habitually, that means over and over and over again, then the infinitive will be used. Tan pronto como se supieron, notice that verb is in the past tense, los resultados de las elecciones, el Partido Conservador anunció su victoria. So it says, as soon as they knew the results of the elections, the Conservative Party announced their victory. So there is no subjunctive in there. Okay? It says, as soon as we did that one. We're going to the next one. Mis padres y yo, this should say mis padres y yo siempre nos peleamos, happens habitually. We always fight with each other when we talk about the corruption in our country. All right, so again, this is an example because it is showing a habitual action, something that happens over and over again. It says, now you try it, indicative or subjunctive. And there are some things here for you to do. This one apparently doesn't have a number, but it's a number 4. So you have to read it and decide whether or not it calls for the subjunctive or whether it calls for the infinitive. When we say the indicative, we're talking normal present tense, but we're deciding, are we going to use the infinitive or are we going to use the subjunctive? All right, so here are the answers. You can see that in the first one they use the subjunctive because there's a K and there's a change in subject. Conservar, if you notice, if you look back at the sentence, there's no K and no change in subject. Same is true for estudiar and ver, okay, and tener. And then if you look at the other ones, you'll see that there's a K there and that it needs the subjunctive.